In episode 10, Clark and Lois decide to share Thanksgiving dinner together at Clark's parents' house back in Smallville, and Jimmy's also coming along bringing his famous yams. And another guest is Lois's father, who we're finally going to get to see, and has a little trouble with Lois from what we heard in a previous episode. So, yeah, definitely interesting, for sure. While Clark is getting coffee, we soon find out that Lois has already learned that Jimmy found out about the orb that features the little hologram of the alternate universe Superman destroying a city, and, them deciding not to tell Clark. And, they almost slip up, but do their best to not indeed tell Clark, and instead, move on to the Daily Planet for a little bit, where they turn out to be promoted by Perry White. Now they've got their own cubicles, and, things are really nice. They're getting some praise from their peers. So it's really nice. And after that, they go straight to Smallville with the permission of Perry, who tells them to have a happy Thanksgiving, which is of course nice. At the Kent farm, Clark is happy to see his folks, give them hugs, and deciding to help his dad with the turkey and all that stuff. And we find out that Clark's mom had already framed the newspaper that they published about Superman saving the city and the city saving Superman after, Parasite and all that. And his mom starts, praising both her son but also Lois, being real nice and all that. And things just seem to be real happy. And then a knock at the door. They open the door, and Lois, of course, greets her father mostly happily, but Clark notices something very clearly, and so do we, if you've seen the episode. It turns out that Lois's father is actually the General himself, who Clark mentioned earlier in the episode wanting to look for him because, he's kind of a threat, and he still considers Superman a threat. So, yeah, very intense, to the point where, Clark kind of crushes the doorknob on the other side, but no one notices that, at least. Things seem a little stilted and awkward at first, at the living room, where Lois and Clark are just sitting down alongside her father, just trying their best to kind of talk, with Clark's mom trying to be, nice, laying out some little snacks before the main course, and trying to, just keep some sort of conversation going. Eventually, Jimmy shows up with his yams, and Clark takes the opportunity to take him to the kitchen and mention that the General is Lois's father, and that he's not quite sure what to do, if he should tell her or not, or if the General will quickly find out that he is Superman. Eventually, after some, more kitchen stuff, and Clark's mom starting to get a little peeved at Lois's father, not because, she knows that he's the General, but more so just because he's a very stilted and kind of rude guest, you could say. Lois, Clark, and Jimmy go outside to kind of talk, but he doesn't bring up the General, just kind of, trying to get some fresh air and figure things out. However, through a little mishap, the holographic device falls out of Lois's bag, and Clark finds it, Clark sees it, grabs it, and it starts playing the hologram. And naturally, he's pretty shocked by this, but knows that he already, has the potential to be a destructive force, just like his people, from what he can tell. But it gets worse from there as the little compartment inside it opens up, revealing the little crystal of kryptonite, and it gives a very bad reaction to Clark as he falls down and is convulsing while his veins are turning green. It's pretty bad. And we cut to the inside of the simulation sort of thing that Clark has been in before, where he tried to talk to his holographic dad, and we see that he knows that kryptonite is around somewhere, and it seems to be a big enough threat to where it automatically engages the safety systems on the giant ship that is embedded in the ground. It gets out of the ground and is airborne. Of course, Clark's parents and the general notice this and go outside. The general takes out his brand new weapon and also calls for backup while he's going straight towards it. And, things just don't seem to be going well for pretty much anyone. Lois puts the kryptonite back in the container, and Clark, gets back to normal for a bit, and they of course, notice the ship, and robots start coming out of it, and Clark knows that he has to stop this, so he flies towards the ship and tries to stop it from causing any more destruction. And in the midst of that, Lois and Jimmy are chased by some robots, and they sort of get split up pretty quickly. And before Jimmy is blasted by a robot, he trips, the container falls out and opens up the kryptonite, and it turns out that the robot then collapses and has some crystallized growths on it that are green. So it seems that the kryptonite works on not just Clark himself in terms of weakening him, but also Kryptonian technology and other things like that. Meanwhile, the general is kind of walking through the cornfield that's all around the farm, and starts blasting at some of the robots with his brand new gun, and it seems to work relatively well on them, except for one big robot that comes at him that he's not quite got the shot at. It's not really that easy, but Superman comes up and destroys the robot and flies away to continue taking care of the other robots. Later, he then sees the portal opening up, the Kryptonian portal, letting in one giant ship trying to fly through the portal, and it's very much like the memory hologram that the general showed Superman before. And of course, that doesn't really feel great to see for the general. Clark, is trying to figure out how exactly he's going to stop the invasion from continuing this time. and he decides that he's going to destroy the ship that came from the ground with the kryptonite, after Jimmy mentions being able to do that with the robots. So Clark takes the container despite Lois's wishes not to, and flies away towards the ship to try and destroy it with the kryptonite, even if it might kill him. Superman crashes through the ship after a couple good sort of smashes in, or whatever you might say. I'm not always great with words, but he gets in and finds like the kind of command center almost, because it's no one really piloting it. It's still like a giant red crystal attached to the ceiling, almost piloting it, I think. And Clark takes out the kryptonite. Of course, it's weakening him again, green veins and all that. And he tries to get it closer to the crystal, the giant red crystal. Nothing seems to work, but he decides to try something new by smashing into the crystal and just leaving the little piece of kryptonite in there. And he collapses, but it seems to work as the giant crystal turns green, and green sort of veins are almost coming around the ship itself, and it seems to do the trick and sort of disable it. After that, we see his father's hologram sort of show up again, and he's back in that sort of holographic little world. Yet again, there's still a language barrier between him and his father, but he seems caring enough of his son to where it seems like he probably doesn't care too much about the invasion being stopped or whatever is going on. And again, we don't exactly know what he's saying, but the only English that he's truly saying is "my son," after his name, Kal-El. And he sort of uses some holographic technology or something to encase Clark in what looks like a coffin, almost, and sort of sends him out of the ship, almost invoking his, classic origin, where as a baby he's put in the pod and sent to Earth just before Krypton blows up. So I don't know if they're going to set that up or not, but it kind of looks like that. The large portal in the sky is now closed, and a little, piece of the big ship is cut in half by the portal and falls down, and Clark is now on the ground after what might have been real with the hologram and stuff. Either way, he's back, and the general is standing across from him, pointing his gun at him, ready to fire, but Lois runs into the way and tries to save him, pleading for her dad not to do it, now that she discovered that he is the general. And that's not really a great thing to discover your dad doing, if your dad does something like that. But her pleading works well enough, and the general calls off the backup that he called for initially, saying that the alien threat was a false alarm, which I don't know how much they're going to believe that, but that's pretty much it. And when Lois looks back to thank him, he's gone, and afterward, Clark, Lois, and Jimmy continue their nice Thanksgiving with the family. Clark helps his dad out a little bit with the turkey, using his heat vision to kind of make sure it's just nice and done, nice and not raw, I would say. And it seems like a happy enough ending, you know? However, at the very end, we get to see in space some kind of robot almost reacting to the failure of the second invasion, and that robot comes to what seems to be its master, looking over like sort of a advanced city under, you know, some sort of peril, or what was peril previously. And, you know, the robot mentions the failure of the invasion, and its supposed master briefly mentions that, you know, soon they will kneel, and I guess a third invasion will soon come. And from what I can guess, this guy is supposed to be General Zod. And that was episode 10. Pretty good, I would say. I'm pretty sure this is meant to be the finale, possibly. I have to look that up though. So, depending on what the title looks like, if there's a little something that says it's finale, then that'll be true. But if not, I won't do that. So who knows? It doesn't like feel too much like a finale. There's not like in the extreme amount of drama you expect in a TV finale, but it's just enough. And I think, you know, they give you enough of that with the reveal of Lois's dad being the general, which, to be fair, did legit surprise me. It's kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming, where, you know, Michael Keaton turns out to be, you know, Spider-Man's girlfriend's dad. Like, just legit surprising. And it does kind of make sense, actually, in terms of, you know, her dad being kind of stoic and not always there for her. And yeah, I like that there's still not a lot of answers for, you know, Kryptonians. We don't get any more like drops of the name Krypton or Kryptonians outside of the brief mention from Mr. Mxyzptlk. But that's, again, like kind of a multiverse thing, so it doesn't just feel quite right yet. And I'm interested in seeing if, you know, Clark's dad is like a part, or Clark's real dad is like a part of this sort of invasive aspect of the Kryptonian species, or the Kryptonian culture, or if that's really just a whole like sect within the planet, and Jor-El wasn't a part of that, or Clark's father wasn't a part of that, and maybe Zod is like the leader of these invader Kryptonians, possibly. That might make sense, though it would be interesting if they went with the idea of having an Invincible and Dragon Ball style twist on Superman's origin, but I doubt it. But we'll have to wait and see. Overall, I really like this episode. You know, it gives you just enough, you know, good and satisfying stuff, but it just feels like, you know, like the rest of the show, really good and giving pretty much just what you need, just what you want. And yeah, and of course I still enjoy the continuing path of Clark and Lois's relationship. I enjoy it, it's cute. I also like Clark's mom. She's pretty wholesome, and his dad's kind of funny. I'm going to give episode 10 an 8 out of 10. Pretty good. And for a special rating that I usually give at the end of each season finale, yes, I looked it up, it is, I'm going to give season 1 of My Adventures with Superman a 9 out of 10. Probably the best Superman series I have ever watched, and probably the best DC series that I've watched in a long time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this season finale review of My Adventures with Superman. This was really fun to do. I love watching the show, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time, and take care out there.